Before I begin tonight, I want to take this opportunity to thank our previous chairman, Mr. Dean. He actually led this group of 14, I don't know what I'd just call them, rambunctious or whatever they are, people for the past year. It was a very turbulent year for the parish council at times. There are things that we've had to deal with, and he's dealt with them very well. And survived. So I'm very happy to. And I don't know how he did it, but I'm sure I'm going to find out soon enough. With that, I would like to bring Marty up, and we have a plaque for your year as chairman.
Don't make me come down there and fix this.
You can say whatever you want to. It's the last time in the chair.
That's it. I had enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you all.
Now, before I begin the rest of the meeting, I want to, certainly if you've looked around, you've seen a few changes. Probably the most noticeable is the clocks. There is a clock up here on this wall, and there's a clock on that podium. So when speakers are given 2 minutes, they know when their 2 minutes is up. When they've given 5 minutes, they know when their 5 minutes is up. Anything other than that, they have to ask for additional time. And that's what our rules state. So we will be adhering to that, there's no reason to say I didn't know what the time was. If you can't read those numbers up there, I'm not sure why you're here. But second thing is, we have set aside an area for videotaping in this chambers, and we will have it marked a little more sufficiently next month. But those next to the press table over here along that wall will be an area for anybody that wants to videotape our meetings. You cannot walk up to the podium and be videotaping something while you're doing. Our deputies have a hard enough time. Basically, they're here to protect us, and so that's going to be one of the issues that we enforce. And then finally, the last thing would be, and I don't see any here tonight, but when people have signs, they will not be able to sit anywhere except the back row. So that they will not block anybody else's view of what's going on in these chambers. So those things are going to start tonight with the new administration, and we're going to adhere to them throughout this year. I would also like to announce that Reichert Toledano will be the Sergeant at Arms. So Mr. Toledano. And Mr. Tanner will be the parliamentarian. So, Mr. Tanner, wherever you are. We've changed the seating around, I'm sorry, but it's a little different. With that in mind, I'd like to go into the presentations. Oh, we didn't do the roll call yet? Okay. So we'll call the roll before we start anything. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Dean? Here. Mr. Sharp? Here. Mr. Thompson? Mr. Marino? Here. Mr. Toledano?
President, and Happy New Year to all, and I just want to tell Mr. Chan I'm going to miss sitting next to him this next year.
Ms. Blanchard? Present. Mr. Stefanczyk?
Present.
Mr. Tanner?
Here.
Mr. Groby?
Here.
Mr. Canulet?
Here.
Mr. Belisario?
Here.
Ms. O'Brien? Here. Mr. Bender?
Here.
Mr. Smith? Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. To begin, then, we will have a presentation and proclamation of St. Tammany Parish Government Employee of the Month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As is our usual practice, we have an Employee of the Month that I am delighted to present tonight. Whereas Joseph Joey Alphonse has been a devoted St. Tammany Parish employee in the legal department as associate counsel since January of 2011, and whereas Joey is consistently the backbone to many complex transactions, such as the acquisition of 1,442 acres for the parish's mitigation bank, and led the efforts from a transactional perspective for certification by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers of the mitigation banking agreement, which is unbelievably complex. He also worked to facilitate the purchase of Southeast Louisiana Hospital from the state of Louisiana. Whereas he has been instrumental in the development of the St. Tammany Advanced Campus, the Performing Arts Center, and many other top priority projects. And whereas he most recently spearheaded the Civic Source adjudicated property auctions process, which has resulted in 28 redemption properties and 28 property sales, totaling 56 properties being brought back into commerce since the program started in May of 2016. And whereas Joey is patient, extremely, and hardworking, extremely, and produces a vast amount of work product, he always has the parish's best interest in mind. We are very fortunate and proud to have him as part of the St. Tammany Parish government and our team. We appreciate and thank him for his diligence and dedication to his duties. Therefore, I, Patricia Brister, as president of St. Tammany, do hereby recognize the hard work and accomplishments of Joseph Alphonse as Employee of the Month, January 2017. And I encourage all employees of St. Tammany Parish to thank him for his contributions and commitment to St. Tammany Parish. Joey, I don't know how you put out the amount of work you do, but we thank you and are indebted to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brister. Thank you. Next presentation is to Trey Foltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Superintendent Foltz, would you mind coming up, joining me? This is certainly a pleasure for me. Having worked with Trey over these years, it's been amazing the amount of work that he's been able to do, and the forward thinking of him and all of your board and staff. So thank you, Trey. So I would like to read this proclamation. Whereas W.L. Trey Foltz III has been named as 2017 Superintendent of the Year by the Louisiana Association of School Executives, a prestigious award given each year to a superintendent who demonstrates strong leadership and excellence in education. And whereas Trey has been an educator for 31 years, serving the St. Tammany Parish school system for his entire career. And whereas he dedicated his life to the education of children and works daily to make sure every child gets the best education possible, truly exemplifying every child, every day. I learned. And whereas we are very fortunate and proud to have him as part of the St. Tammany Parish team, and we thank him for his diligence and dedication to our community. His leadership and commitment to our parish is a critical component to the quality of life we all enjoy. Therefore, I, Patricia Brister, as president of St. Tammany, do hereby recognize and acknowledge the hard work and accomplishments of Trey Foltz, 2017 Superintendent of the Year. Let's take a picture and then you can say a few words, okay? And I know Trey would like to say a couple words, so please do. Thank you, Trey.
First of all, I would like to thank and introduce our newly elected board president, Ms. Robin Mullett, who came with us tonight. Ms. Mullett is our new board president, so thank you for being here as well. And I have 15 bosses, and we have a meeting tonight too, but we start at 7 o'clock. So they're all in the cafeteria watching this meeting right now. So let me say I have 15 wonderful school board members that I am proud and privileged to work with each and every day. Ms. Pack took a lot of what I wanted to say because I think we've been around so much. But for someone who is a product of this school system, as well as 32nd year in the school system, so 44 years of my life have been part of the St. Tammany Parish Public School System, it's an honor for me to be here tonight to represent our school system and receive such a nice award from my dear friend, Pat Brister, and from each of you that I respect so very much and have worked with many of you in many different ways. In our school system, as Pat talked about, every child, every day. And when you have 38,000 students and close to 6,000 employees at 55 different locations, every child, every day looks a lot different for each and every child. And that's our challenge, to make sure we do that. And I get to go around the state a lot and talk to a lot of people and share with other superintendents what we have in St. Tammany, the relationship I have with Pat Brister, the relationship I have with you guys, with the sheriff I just saw in the back of the room, with the mayors, with the DA, with all the different chiefs of police and all the different people. That's what makes St. Tammany Parish special. That's what makes the quality of life that people want to be a part of here in St. Tammany Parish. So as superintendent, it is a challenge for me to continue to uphold that and to be a partner with each of you to make sure that we do indeed meet those needs of every child every day and continue to make St. Tammany Parish the place that we all want to be. So I thank you for this, wish you the best in 2017, and God bless each of you. Thank you.
Actually, Trey, our thanks to go to you and to your staff for the way that you've run the school system here in St. Tammany. We have the best school system of any place around, and that's a credit to everybody, but it's also a credit certainly to you and your staff and your board members. So thank you. The next presentation on here was going to be by Nick Richards and Judge Peter Garcia. That'll be postponed until next month, and there's reasons for that. So we go to the next presentation, which is to our presentation of Award of Excellence to our Finance Department. The Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting has been awarded to St. Tammany Parish by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada for its comprehensive annual financial report for the 13th year. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the areas of government accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and a management. An award of financial reporting achievement has been awarded to the individuals deemed primarily responsible for preparing the award-winning report. This has been presented to Leslie Long. Leslie, if you'll stand, our Chief Financial Officer. Laura Wren Lyons, is she here? No. Is Annie Perkins here? Neither one of them. Well, I want Leslie, take back our congratulations to them, and from a standpoint of those of you that are in the audience, it says that we're one of the best from a standpoint of accounting, that we have accounting for all of our money in the United States, and I think that's a tribute to our finance department. So thank you all very much. Next one is the Certificate of Recognition to the Veterans Honor Guard, Maureen O'Brien.
Spread out so we can see y'all.
They're used to being in line.
You heard the commands, guys. Let's go.
Someone each side would be fine too. Well, it is such an honor and a privilege to recognize these wonderful gentlemen here tonight. You know, I keep on running into them at different events, and it's just wonderful to see how active they still are in our community. I want to tell you a little bit about the West St. Tammany Parish Honor and Color Guard. The West St. Tammany Parish Honor Guard and Color Guard is composed of military veterans of various organizations, such as the American Legion or the Veterans of Foreign Wars. A primary function of the Honor Guard is to render military honors to deceased veterans if requested by their family. The honors include bidding our comrades farewell at a funeral home or other locations such as their home, presenting a Bible to the next of kin, folding and presenting the American flag, firing a 3-volley rifle salute in recognition of the veterans' commitment to duty, honor, and country, and the playing of taps. The St. Tammany Parish Honor Guard also renders community service such as flag etiquette classes in elementary schools, posting and retrieving the colors at a church, school, military event, or a federal ceremonial event. This sometimes includes the raising of the American flag followed by a 3-volley rifle salute and the playing of taps again. The ceremonious retiring of worn or faded American flags is also a function of the St. Tammany Parish Honor Guard and Color Guard. The ceremony is conducted with the utmost respect for our nation's flag and in accordance with the ethical protocols set by the United States Flag Code and the American Legion Ceremonial Manual. Now, requests for the St. Tammany Parish Honor Guard and Color Guard services are available by calling the American Legion Post 16 in Covington if anybody is interested in having them assist with a event. But again, it is such a tremendous pleasure to recognize you today. So the St. Tammany Parish government would like to recognize St. Tammany Veterans Honor Guard for their service to the parish. St. Tammany is a better community because of their contributions and assistance at local churches, schools, military events, and federal ceremonial events. And we also want to recognize and thank you for your service to our country. Thank y'all so much.
I can't add anything to what Maureen has said, but I know how busy they are because at every event I go to, they're there. So I thank you very much for what you do every day for all our very well-deserved veterans. Thanks, guys.
You want to say a few words?
Mr. Chairman, council members, Ms. Pat, guests, we are the St. Tammany Veterans Honor Guard. I am currently the commander of Post 16, but titles and names don't matter here. What does is what this group of guys does for veterans and their families. It's really rewarding to be there. On behalf of us, which include Post 16, Covington, Louisiana, the VFW 8720 in Abita Springs, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Mr. Sharp?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maureen. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Mr. Sharp? There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have with us this evening a group of representatives and some folks from the St. Tammany Parish 4-H FFA Livestock Show. We have with us the president of the association, Ms. Janine Bullock. I wanted to introduce her to you. She, in turn, will make some comments and introduce to you the FFA student who's going to read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. On behalf of the Junior Livestock Association, our parents and students, we would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to support and promote our livestock program in St. Tammany Parish. Now I will introduce Colt Dietrich. Colt is a senior at Covington High School. He holds the office of treasurer for the Covington High FFA chapter. He is the Area 4 president of the Louisiana Association of the FFA. He and his family have been involved with livestock for many years and are lifetime residents of St. Tammany Parish. Colt will now read the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Janine. Whereas the 4-H FFA St. Tammany Parish Junior Livestock Show and Sale is the culmination of years of hard work and dedication for 4-H FFA livestock exhibitors in St. Tammany Parish. And whereas livestock projects teach youth exhibitors valuable life skills such as responsibility and self-confidence. And whereas at the 2017 show and sale, business and citizens alike can experience the enjoyment of viewing the show animals and judging of champions, then participate as buyers in the sale that follow. And whereas the 4-H and FFA promotes agriculture, commerce, and helps ensure the future of agriculture, interest, and heritage in St. Tammany Parish. The St. Tammany Parish hereby resolves that the Parish Council support the St. Tammany Parish Junior Livestock Show and Sale on January 21st and 20th, 2017 at the Parish Fairgrounds, and encourages parish businesses and citizens to attend and participate in the worldwide event. The Parish of St. Tammany further resolves and proclaims January 20th and 21st, 2017 as 4-H FFA Junior Livestock and Sale Weekend.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Sharp to approve the resolution, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote by your lights.
With a verbal vote for Mr. Bender, motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. Mr. Roby, the next item, certificates of recognition. Mr. Groby, next item.
Mr. Paul, Ms. Mary, Doris, come on up. Tonight's presentation to a group of volunteers that have deeply and worked very hard for District 7, the District 4 Recreation District in Lacombe. They have, over the past 5 years, volunteered their time at no cost to the district, maintaining the concession stands and raising funds and donating their own time so that some kids can have scholarships, as they awarded last year, and as a lot of the students go to them, fill out forms, and many of the funds are covered for uniforms and registration fees for the district. With the cutting of tops last year, and Superintendent Foltz can attest to this, any money that anyone can give a student to get help in college is deeply, deeply appreciated. In the past 5 years, Paul Leary, Miss Mary, Miss Doris, and Paul Jr., who is their treasurer, have raised over $12,000. Last year, they gave $2,000 away, and the year before that, they gave money away to scholarships. This is a group of people that I had to kind of beg to get here tonight. They did not really want public recognition. Most people are a little bit embarrassed about the limelight, but these are the people who make your community straight. And all of our communities have them. All of our districts have them. It's just the hardworking people. And tonight, I want to go ahead and read the thank you. This certificate is presented to you in deep appreciation for supporting the youth of Lacombe, as well as providing needed services, support, and most importantly, scholarship opportunities for many students throughout Lacombe. This certificate of recognition was unanimously approved by the St. Tammany Parish Council on the 5th of January 2017. And with that, I deeply appreciate and thank you all for all you have done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to take this time to recognize in the back of the room our new sheriff, Randy Smith, has joined us tonight, so thank you, Randy, for coming. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute.
I don't know. I don't know if you knew, and we got the mayor.
I know,
of
Greg,
Abita.
I know the mayor of Abita is here
Okay.
as well, but he's also going to be speaking to us in a few minutes, right? So I understand that, so thank you. Thanks, TJ. Here we go. Ordinances for introduction. Pulled. Number 4 is ordinance 5734. Ordinance 5, 5735. Ordinance 6, 5736. Ordinance 7, 5737. And ordinance 17, 5747. And what's the next one? Ordinance, must be 20. It's number 5750. Number 20. For resolutions, and I don't know that all these are in some particular, I'm going to just read them off of my thing. Resolution number 1, resolution 4731. Resolution number 2, 4732. Resolution number 5, 4735. Resolution number 9, 4739. And resolution number 16, 4747. What am I missing?
7 and 15.
And ordinance, what's the numbers on it?
It's 7, 47, 37.
Okay, ordinance number 7 is 4737. I thought I read that one. And 15.
And this one, 15, 47, 46.
Okay, and 15 is 4746. I think we got the whole agenda pulled. Is there anything left to pull on the agenda? Okay.
Steve?
Anybody want to pull anything else on the agenda? Mr. Dean? Mr. Sharp? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Lorino? Mr. Toledano? Ms. Blanchard? Mr. Tanner?
Resolution number 174748.
Okay. That's it, Mr. Groby? Mr. Canulet, you got one on here already? Okay. Mr. Belisario? Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Bender? Mr. Smith? Thank you. All right. Take a motion to adopt the consent calendar. Motion by Mr. Lorino, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Any discussion? See none. All those, let's vote for your lights.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, ordinance number 5734. Ordinance calendar to extend for 6 months the moratorium on property and Tammany Terrace subdivision. Award 3, District 2. Mr. Sharp or Mr. Tanner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we withdraw this item from the agenda.
Move to remove from the agenda, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion?
I'd like the record to reflect I'm recusing myself on this particular action.
Okay, thank you. Please vote with your lights.
Motion passes with 13 yeas and 1 recusal, no one absent.
Thank you. Next one is number 5, ordinance calendar number 5735. Ordinance amending the Parish Code of Ordinances to exempt from tax events occurring at a public facility. Mr. Dean, it's pulled by T.J. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would assume that this was originated from Mr. Dean, so he may be able to answer my questions about it, or whoever it originated with. When I read this ordinance, it's a little bit unclear to me some of the language, especially in the second line when it says to exempt from local tax any and all sales at or for. That's my first question. If I can get an explanation as to why we have at events at, and then we have events for. Does that signify that at a public place an event can be held on behalf of somebody else that's not there, and they're exempt from for collecting sales tax as well?
I'll ask the council to.
Mr. Chairman. It should be, this pertains to events at recreation districts. So it should be at, not for, but it's at. So your concession sales and things like that are now based upon with the permissive revised statute gives us the authority that if we adopt this, that at our local rec districts, in any recreational type activities, we don't have to charge a sales tax.
Thank you for that part. The second part of my question has to do with the tax being exempt when it's being held at a public property, recreation district or something, whatever, at this building even. Any entity that, does this mean that any entity that is selling something from that location will be exempt from collecting sales taxes? For instance, like gun and knife shows at the Harbor Center. Would they be exempt from collecting sales taxes?
No, I'm going to answer, I believe, and Mr. Hand is looking that up, but I think the 4 has to be in there, TJ, because it has to be, the profits have to go to the recreation district. That's what we're looking at. So it has to be at the recreation district and for the recreation district. So, or a public entity such as that would have one, it has to be at their facility and for what they're due as a public entity. Can't be just any group coming in and doing that.
Mr. Stefancic, point of information. As I read it, as we look at the document as drafted, it does not limit itself to recreation districts. And it does incorporate the language of for.
I didn't, okay, and I wasn't implying that it limits it to recreation districts. If the library board decides to have a library function at a library, which is a public building, and the library board decides to have that, they could raise money without having to pay, or they could do something without having to pay taxes on it.
Right.
So it's any public entity.
I might have misunderstood what Mr. Hand said just a moment ago.
It is the language copied from the state statute. And this came to us through one of the recreation districts. The auditors for the recreation district pointed out that if we adopted this ordinance, then the activities at a recreation district, and as pointed out, it would apply to other public entities at their facilities, would be exempt from the taxation required on the sales that take place.
Well, I'm going to just raise this question, not to beat this horse to death, but suppose you have a private undertaking at a public facility, i.e. someone mentioned a gun show. I think we have to look at this language a little bit and make sure it doesn't inadvertently incorporate that as an exemption, but I yield to our counsel on that. But as I read it now, I could see some potential confusion there, but I'll yield to Mr. Hand on that.
While I still had the floor, Mr. Chairman, I was headed in the same direction. It doesn't state in the ordinance itself, when I read the entire ordinance, it doesn't specify any particular location. It just says any public entity. But it doesn't specify either any particular organization. So it leaves itself open, as Mr. Toledano stated, to any organization, whether it's private or public, who's selling something at a public location to be able to be exempt from collecting sales taxes. And I don't think that's
what we may have to do is go get an opinion from either the legislative auditor to guide the tax collections at various venues as to their interpretation of this. Because that's the exact verbiage from the state statute that we were told needed to be included in this for purposes of adoption. And I understand what y'all are telling me, and I don't disagree with you. However, this is the exact language from the revised statute, and it may not be clear, and we may have to get an interpretation regarding that.
I would propose, in view of that we either table or postpone or whatever you think is the appropriate thing.
Yes.
And do you need a motion, Mr. Stefanczyk, on that?
This would be a motion to introduce, and
Nope.
it's going to lay over a month anyhow, so there's time to work any issues that we have.
Which would include amending it before adoption?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we have to look at that very carefully.
Okay, then I would just recommend we introduce and let it lay over and resolve our issues this month.
But before we go there, Mr. Chairman, to go ahead and introduce, to Tara or anybody else, to get that information from the state, will we be able to get that information in time to satisfy our next month's meeting?
All we can do is try, but I believe that we should have that information available, and we'll contact the audit firm also that made this recommendation to see if they've gotten any interpretations relative to it.
If it don't, it can be addressed or tabled at that time.
Okay. One other question. Did this occurrence happen as a result of the audit at one particular agency in this parish, or we've had multiple incidences of where this situation has arisen?
Mr. Chairman, the director of Coquille Sporting Center is out here, and he's the one who asked, would you like to get some clarification from him?
If he's here,
We have other ones too, because I have, in my district, people were questioning.
so let's introduce this and put it on for next month, and if we don't get our answers resolved, we can then table it or do what we need to then.
Okay, so to answer my question, we have had more than one agency with this situation. Okay.
Yes. Motion by Mr. Bender to introduce?
No.
No? Okay.
I have a comment or a question, but I'll wait until after it's introduced.
Well, we're not,
Or
Motion
unless
to
you want to hear me
introduce.
now, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make a motion to introduce.
Motion by Mr. Dean to introduce, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Then it is introduced. You got a comment to make, Mr. Bender?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is really along this line. And I guess using the state is one thing, but using the state, and I don't make this as a negative comment, using the state is not always the best thing to do, okay? I wasn't elected to follow everything the state votes on, okay? I don't agree on everything they vote on, as I'm sure they don't agree on everything we vote on. But to maintain our own autonomy and look at this in terms of what are our needs, my question is this. We have small entities, public entities, in every council member's district, okay? I think in every council member's district. We have small entities with volunteer boards and so forth who may not have, as I'm reading this, an official office that is owned by that entity. The library does. The rec district, I think that you're referring to, does, okay? But some of these smaller entities have to borrow or use a facility to have their meetings. So I'd like, Mr. Chairman, to ask Mr. Hand a question.
Go ahead and ask Mr.
Okay.
Hand a question.
Mr. Hand, in the case of, I know, for example, Mr. Toledano, our member from Mr. Gould, he has a gravity drainage district, okay? I don't think they have their own office, do they, Reichert? Okay, so I guess my question is do we really want to eliminate an entity like that from this same ability to raise funds if they wanted to? Because the way I'm reading this is, if you don't have an office, if you don't have a facility, you can't abide by this change in the ordinance.
Mr. Chair?
That was a question.
Mr.
Wait a
Hand,
minute,
that
that's a
question's to you.
It says publicly owned property, on the publicly owned property. So again, I will include that in trying to obtain a clarification on it.
Okay,
So what
thank
your
you.
question is that if you have a public entity that does not own property, and they conduct an event, can it be excluded from sales tax?
Can they conduct the
Yes.
event, do they have to conduct the event on a publicly owned piece of property?
Correct.
That's loaned to them by another public entity?
I'll include that in the clarification.
Okay, thank you very
Mr.
much.
Canulet?
Yes. My other concern is I'll be honest with you, I don't think we should go forward with this till we get this right. But if a rec district decided to have a beer keg, a beer fest, where they're serving alcohol, and their bylaws allow them to serve alcohol, we will not have a big beer party and no taxes. Say the rec district gets $1,000, and the beer, however much beer they sell, you see where I'm going with this? That's not necessarily true. It's not always true. Each rec, people go to the Mandeville Center, I'm sorry, Castine. The Castine Center, there's alcohol in all the Castine centers. They sell alcohol there all the time. You go to functions, there's alcohol there. But there's functions there and there's alcohol there. So, I mean, I think we need to get this straight before we go forward. That's it.
Unless there's specific questions of the council, I'm going to ask Mr. Hand to review the ordinance and come back with his findings and give us a report. Actually, we'll email it out to everybody sometime in the next week or so. So with that in mind, I've got, Mr. Sharp's got his light on. Oh, sorry. Mr. Smith?
And
My light is blinking.
and that response that Mr. Hand is going to return with, it will also address the question about private entities, Terry, for instance, gun and knife shows, that would they be able to take advantage of this? It doesn't say that, though.
Yeah, I'll include that inquiry.
Right, I see Mr. Tanner
Yeah.
shaking his head, but it doesn't
No,
say
I'll
that.
include that in the inquiry.
Ms. Dobbs, would you like to speak on, you didn't turn in
I
to
didn't
speak?
send a card up.
I noticed
in
that.
There wasn't a
That's why I
agenda
couldn't see
review
your hand.
meeting either, so I'll take this opportunity if you'll give it to me. I just wanted to point
You
out,
got 2 minutes, okay?
I hope I don't take that long.
Thank you.
I would just like to point out that, for instance, at the parish fairgrounds, every spring, there's a flower show. There are vendors there, and it's held by a not-for-profit organization, the Master Gardeners. Well, do the vendors charge sales tax based on this language? I mean, that's just one other example of a perfectly innocent thing that goes on, but because of the language in this, a bunch of us talked about it yesterday, and it would appear that the vendors at such a place, for instance, I think the brand name is Steinhauer Productions. They do a craft show at the Parish Fairgrounds. They're all vendors. They profit from that, and it's a for-profit group. Do the vendors at that show have to collect sales tax? The language is, we all read it, presents so many questions that it's really a very complex issue. What seemed like a very straightforward thing is now complex. So I too would appreciate some clarifications. Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't turn in a card. My name is Richard Bentley Smith. I'm the executive director for Coquille. I can answer almost all of the questions that you gentlemen and ladies have this evening. I'm the one that reached out to Mr. Han. LaPorte is our auditing group. And what took place is in the special session in this last year, the state of Louisiana passed an ordinance that specifically addresses schools and recreation districts and even universities when it comes to ticket sales and university sales. It does not address any gun or knife shows, any of those kind of entities. So it addresses gate fees, concession sales. It would even be our registration fees would be taxed going into this year. That's what y'all need to understand. So all of us that we take a hit already on registration fees in order to allow opportunities for a lot of kids in this area. This tax is going to make it to where we're going to have to go up on fees on a lot of individuals in the area in order to pay for these programs that we provide to the entity and to the community. And the concession sales that y'all just recognized somebody for tonight, they're going to have to start tracking all of their sales because they're going to get taxed on those sales. And it is a 8% tax, I believe, if I remember correctly. Any other questions?
Questions, comments? Thank you.
And by the way, all alcohol sales that are done at the casting center are by private entities. We do not have an alcohol sales permit. So if they do sell alcohol there, it does have to be reported by whichever entity rents it out.
Yes, Mr. Stephens. Yes,
Any
Mr.
other?
Stephens. To him, Steve.
Okay. Mr.
The legislation that you point to that the state passed, is it statewide or is it just?
Yes, sir. It's
local?
statewide. Louisiana State University actually already got this ordinance passed to where they wouldn't be taxed on their tickets for any of their athletic sales.
Okay.
So LSU football tickets, baseball, basketball, none of those will be taxed by the state of Louisiana. Neither will Saints tickets, by the way. Saints will not be taxed on any of their tickets either.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Has been introduced, so unless there's other.
I would just like to say one thing for the record. I'm all for the Saints and I'm all for LSU. But wow, our state's broke. I have Saints tickets and I pay tax on them. Now, I'm not going to pay tax on them, but we can't provide proper funding for autism in this state, which is about to be cut by the state legislature. You know, this is why I said, don't follow the state. This gentleman, I'm glad, thank you, sir, okay? Because believe me, this just opened my eyes tremendously on how decisions are being made. This is the most outrageous. We went from a small recreation district, which I totally understand, kid ball, to the Saints and LSU. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been introduced, so let's go on to the next item. Ordinance calendar number 5736 to amend the 2017 operating budget. Mr. Smith, you asked that it be pulled. Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Canulet. The one that you pulled,
Right. And I have some questions about it, yes.
okay?
Okay. We didn't have the agenda review last month, so, you know, we got, it's going to be a little bit laborious tonight, I guess. But anyway, can someone explain to me the transaction specifically in funds number 018, 019, 130, 131, 133 to 135.
Sure. When you adopted the budget in December, and when we introduced it in September, the new economic development districts were not, did not have any taxes imposed at the time.
Right.
So the taxes were effective in January 2017, and this is to create a special revenue fund for each of those economic development districts to record the revenue in each of the funds. So 118 was a fund that we had used for both the existing EDDs, which is at Rooms to Go and was at Nord-Dulac. And so this is like two things. One, we had the new economic development districts come into place, so we had to create new special revenue funds for each. And we also, some of the items within this entire ordinance are relative to our new ERP process, where we have to set up more funds and divisions to account for some of the revenue that is coming in, and it's all part of like the new software that we're putting in. So that's some of the issues on the other pages, like with regard to building maintenance, where we have to have every building separated. So some of the transactions are relative to that process.
So when I look at 018, the Economic Development Sales Tax District Fund, that includes Nord-Dulac and Rooms to Go?
Well, that one did include Nord-Dulac and Rooms to Go, and then we are zeroing that one out and now creating instead 130 through 136.
Okay, so the in and out was not a...
No, it was just, it was to eliminate that fund and create the other 6 funds.
Gotcha.
5 or 6 funds.
Gotcha. And finally, on 019, the Economic Development Fund?
Yes, yes, sir. Where we're increasing the budget by $60,000.
Yes, ma'am. Can you share with us who the consultant is and what is, I didn't see anything about the scope of the work in that
That's for the P3.
relationship.
That's for the P3.
Can I ask you a
It's a P3?
Excuse me.
It's a P3 consultant.
3?
P3, which is public-private partnership,
Okay,
and it's a consultant with regard to the Cultural Arts District.
right.
And it was an advertised RFP, and I think the selection has been made now. Yeah, at this time, the RFP had not opened, but the name of the group is PFM.
Right. And what are they doing, design work or?
We are putting together a program on how to fund that area. One of the ways is through a public-private partnerships on property near there. This is a consultant to help us get to that point on funding this. Not tax funding, but public-private partnerships.
Okay. How to put that together? Okay.
I'm going to recommend to everybody on the budget items. Our finance chairman will be having meetings more often, and he will have one next month. So most of the stuff from the finance can be brought up at that time and discussed. Mr. Tanner, I think, has agreed to do that, and we will, that's the place really to discuss all those things and get staff prepared for it, so we know that, what they've got to address. So with that in mind, that one was introduced. Ordinance calendar number 5737 to establish the 2017 grants budget. Mr. Smith, you asked that be pulled?
Ms. Leslie, if you will, again, just give us just a general synopsis of the kind of the breakdown on the programs. Per program, on a percentage basis, if you don't mind.
Well, the ordinance in front of you is for 3 new grant awards that were received.
Right.
For LAHEAP, which is energy assistance, and for our CDBG entitlement funds, it's an annual allocation that we receive based on a formula. And the total amount for the annual period 2016 is just close to $900,000, and it's for several programs.
And honestly, I can't.
Well, I think if you'll give us some time, we'll break down the percentages. We don't have those right at hand, but they are just to spend the grant money where they're supposed to be spent. and put it in those, in those
particular
accounts.
programs.
Yes, but those are the grant, the names of the grants. We can get the percentage for you.
There's a published action plan that dictates how the funds are utilized, and we, I can send that to you tomorrow, and we can discuss that further.
That'll be
If
fine.
that would be helpful?
That'll be fine.
Sure, and it'll show you what percentage is dedicated to each particular program or activity.
Okay, good. It listed the program, it just didn't go into more detail, but thank you, that'll be fine tomorrow.
Thank you.
That's all I
Mr.
have.
Tanner?
Let me just, Mr. Smith, I understand you got a lot of questions and what have you, but you also understand that we just introduced in these ordinances, and all these questions could have been made until next month to the meeting to find out whether you supported it or you didn't support it. And so now, we're just extending this meeting over something. All we need to do is introduce these ordinances and go on about our business, and if you're against them and what have you, or you want to know more information about them, I'm sure that if you get with Leslie, you get with me, you get with Steve, what have you, be able to find out the answers to some of the questions that you're doing.
Thank you for that enlightening information, Mr. Tanner, that I think I already knew, but I still reserve.
You don't have the floor, Mr. Smith, anymore, and I'm going to ask that this thing be introduced. Motion by Mr. Tanner to introduce, seconded by Mr. Toledano. That's all we need. Thank you. Item number 17, 5747, ordinance count number 5747, amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2.1 acres from HC1 to HC2, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith.
I'm going to move to introduce.
Motion to introduce, seconded by Mr. Groby. You have any comments, Mr. Smith?
No more than the petitioner and I, we are working on some potential revisions to the ordinance, and we will have those prepared for the next month's meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Fonzie?
Number, Mr. Tanner.
I'm going to direct this to Mr. Smith, and this is his ordinance. He's bringing it up. He's going to change it between now and the next meeting, but he's not going to discuss that with the council meeting, the members. So it's the same thing you just did with all the other ones that where you wanted to know information and you didn't have it, and you still don't have information in this one, and now you move to introduce. I don't understand that. I second his motion to introduce, by the way.
Mr. Chairman.
Look, I'm going to put a stop to all this, and Mr. Tanner, both of you need to keep your remarks down, and no, I'm not going to give any more to the floor, and I'm going to move on to the next ordinance. Ordinance count number 5750 to authorize the parish president to purchase or otherwise acquire certain parcels for the Abita River Regional Detention Pond, Ward 3, District 2. I think Mr. Shane asked that this, Jeffrey Shane?
Mr. Stefancic, I think the council clerk has the updated survey, and that needs to be exchanged for the existing exhibit that is contained in the agenda packet.
So there's a motion to amend?
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, no, sir, no, I'm not making that motion.
No, I'm not asking you. I mean, that's, we need a motion to amend, right, the ordinance?
No, sir. You do not need a motion to amend. It says by
Mr.
the-
Tanner, you don't own this, you don't have
I'm
the floor.
I'm the parliamentarian, though.
Mr. Tanner.
You're acting as a parliamentarian.
No, I'm not. Mr. Tanner. Do we need a motion to just introduce, or do we need a motion to amend?
We simply just need to exchange out the exhibit that is attached to the current ordinance as written. As written, the current ordinance is correct on its face.
Thank you. So we just need to have a new packet put in before next month?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And no changes are made to the amount of property that we are seeking to acquire. There was just a subsequent minor subdivision.
Okay. So motion to introduce. So moved by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Ms. Blanchard. Okay, we're to resolutions. Resolution ordering and calling special elections to be held for the Justice Center sales and use tax. Oh, this is 4731 and Parish Lighting District number 6. I have a statement to read. No action will be taken to tonight's meeting with regard to adopting a resolution calling a sales tax election and Lighting District number 6 millage election. Notice is hereby given that its meeting to be held on Thursday, February 2nd, 2017 at 6 p.m. at the council chambers of the Parish Government Complex, 21490 Coop Drive, Mandeville, Louisiana. The Parish Council of the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, plans to consider adopting a resolution ordering and calling elections to be held within the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, to authorize the levy of sales and use tax, and number 2, St. Tammany Lighting District number 6, to authorize the levy of an ad valorem tax. I've read the statement. I'm going to ask that somebody remove the motion to remove the resolution as from tonight.
So moved, Mr. Sponsor.
Second. By Mr. Toledano, second by Ms. Blanchard.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a statement before you vote on that?
Ms. Brister she has an explanation.
Sure. So to explain a little further, the State Bond Commission attorney and the Secretary of State Counsel would like to take a closer look at the word rededication. They have no history of a sales tax being proposition that has a reduction in the amount. So they are not sure that's the correct word to use in this proposition. Additionally, when we added the specialty courts in the language, it could be considered as an expansion. They want to look at that also. So we'll send all the wording, backup information to them tomorrow morning. Mr. Schluter will have all that to them and give them more time to look at this proposition to make sure by reducing it, it can still use the same language. And as stated above, we will be bringing it back in February, and the time frame will be the same for the April election. I hope that explained it well enough.
Thank you. I had a card from Jennifer Westler. Does she want to speak?
You still want to talk on it, or wait till next week?
Yeah, it's going to be on next month if you want to stay till then. Okay, thank you. Okay. We have a motion on the floor to remove, seconded by, and we second it, so please vote with your lights.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Resolution number 2, CS 4732, to concur, not to concur with the town of Abita Springs, annexation and rezoning of 31.47 acres from Parish A3 to town of Abita Springs, C. Ward 10, District 5, Mr. Toledano. Motion by Mr. Toledano to concur with the annexation, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Any discussion? Mr. Lemons, were you going to talk on this one or the next one?
I'll speak on this one, okay? I'm Greg Lemons. I'm mayor of Abita Springs. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman and Councilman, as well as staff and Parish administration. I'd ask you respectfully to concur with this annexation of this piece of property. This piece of property is approximately 31 acres. A small portion of it is usable because the rest of it's in the creek bed there, so it floods quite often in there. Part of the reason for this is we want to create an industrial corridor in that area there. We've spent some money to put some utilities there, and I will respectfully ask you to concur with this annexation of this piece of property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shane, you had a card?
Yes, sir. Jeff Shane, Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent the landowners of this tract and was asked by Town Attorney Edwardino to make a statement to you this evening, and that is that all of the conditions that have been requested by your legal department as it relates to the annexation, there were a few things that needed to be done. Those things either have been done or are in the process of being done, so we do not know of any open issues as it relates to legal description, location of servitude. There's also one petitioner that still needs to sign the petition, and she's going to sign it in the morning.
Thank you. No lights on, so please vote with your lights.
Yeah. Mr. Devontae, my motion is that it be adopted pursuant to, rather subject to the restrictions that Mr. Shane made reference to.
Okay, and that was seconded before, right?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I included that language.
So please vote with your lights on the resolution.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 5, resolution number 4735. Resolution to request the Honorable Donald J. Trump, President-elect of the United States, to consider appointing Commander John B. Wells as Secretary of Veteran Affairs. Ms. O'Brien.
Yes, sir. I wanted to mention that St. Tammany's own Commander John Wells has been an avid, extremely active supporter of veterans, not only in Louisiana, but in the entire country. He has traveled tirelessly to Washington, D.C. on a very regular basis to promote and support these veterans. And I just wanted to mention that I think Commander John Wells would be an excellent choice for Secretary of Veterans Affairs.
Thank you. I have a card from Jennifer Werther again. Wish to speak on this. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Werther. I'm a retired Navy chief, and I appreciate that the person suggested is a Navy commander, but it is in no way the Parish Council's job to lobby the federal government for me. Okay, so to talk to the current or next president of the United States on my behalf, you are already extorting my tax money to lobby the president of the United States. So that should not have been on here at all. Thank you.
Any further discussions? Nope. I need a motion. Motion by Ms. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Any further discussion? Please vote with your lights. Where's the card from the Sarah?
Motion passes. 11 yeas, 1 abstention, 1 absent.
Thank you. I had a card from Sarah Stewart on Resolution 4736. We passed that a while ago. I don't know what your intent was, but that was not pulled in time to be discussed separately, so that motion has been passed. If you wish to have it brought back up again sometime, you need to ask for that to be put on the agenda next month. Resolution number 4737 to amend ordinance calendar number 163653 to make changes to 2017 capital improvement budget and capital assets. And I have one card. This was by a speaker. So motion by who? Mr. Tanner, seconded by Ms. Blanchard. And I have one card to speak on this, Jennifer Werther. You have 2 minutes, you know.
All right. All right, so this is for 4737. As part of my tax money, I am enabling your government empire building to spend $2 million on improvements of non-capital assets. One part of that is painting the monstrosity of a courthouse that is perfectly fine. Is that the new 911 building in Lacombe, that the other ones, the video screens being mounted and all new computers? Those are all the only assets added. The rest is maintenance of a building and a pond for a subdivision. I request that my council member motion to postpone this indefinitely, and further that the council provide the people information on the projected money that will ultimately be spending on the new 911 building, and not throw them out at different meetings like this was.
Motion on the resolution. Oh, you already made it, so, and seconded. So any further discussion? Please vote with your lights. I'm sorry, Jake.
I do want to make a correction, Mr. Worth. The funds that, if you're talking about the 911 communications district that we're building in Lacombe, those funds are paid for by user fees off of cell phones and telecommunication lines. Thank you.
Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
4739. Thank you. Resolution number C, 4739, a resolution to acknowledge the authority of Parish President to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office. Somebody please make a motion to enter. Motion by Mr. Toledano to approve, seconded by Mr. Dean. Ms. Werther, you wish to speak on this one?
Thank you. Parish government desires to provide funding to the Sheriff's Office for crisis intervention training. We have paid, as part of the government empire building, for the coroner to be the point of contact for mental health. He has requested a raise, nurses, and assistants for this endeavor. These are the people that the pre-arrest diversion was going to be with, and the reason for hiring them. We are already adding money to the Sheriff's Office despite any information on the new sheriff's reductions. Why can't the officers be trained by the people already hired in that field without this being a new request for a cooperative endeavor agreement to push money to the Sheriff's Office for this training? I request that my council member motion to postpone this indefinitely, and further that the council provide the people information on the training that the coroner's office, new qualified personnel, can assist the sheriff's office with.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor to adopt. Please vote with your lights.
this. Another one. This part? It's in. It went out.
Did the back of the monitor come in for?
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Thank you. Resolution number 15, Resolution CS 4746, requesting the boards of all St. Tammany Parish public entities complete a detailed review of all credit card expenditures on a monthly basis. Mr. Smith.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and
You wish to introduce to talk about it?
pardon me,
You need to introduce it before you talk about it.
I move to introduce.
Moved to introduce by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Now, Mr. Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you. In lieu of the fact that my tone of voice or some other means that I express myself seems to not meet with the pleasure of some of my colleagues or one of my colleagues, I did not know that we had instituted some measures of debate on this panel that limited the time that we had to speak on different issues. However, we will direct our questions to the two things on this particular resolution. Are there any identified offenders, if anyone can answer for me, of this credit card expenditure policy?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can respond to that. Jake Grobe and myself were the ones who came forth with this resolution. I called to him. He never recognizes me.
Finance put up this resolution.
Jesus God.
Jake and Dean put the resolution.
Yes.
Okay, Dean.
Yes. Sure. Thank you. TJ, go back to last September, Legislative Auditor's Report. There's a voluminous number of pages with problems with credit cards. So we talked about it. We wanted to come forward. We can't mandate because most of them, because they're not under our privy, that we can authorize or require them to do it. We're requesting them to do that. I've had some pushback from one area, that's it. To me, they need to be able to show that they're managing the public money properly. That's why we did it. It's not a big deal. I mean, it makes it, everybody comes back against the parish council, the parish government when these things happen. We appoint maybe one person to a board and commission, and they follow up the credit cards, and everybody blames us for it. We're trying to put some transparency in there to get these people to make sure people are reviewing all credit card purchases, make sure the slips are there. If someone goes to a restaurant, there's no alcohol in that bill. It's that simple. That's all it's about.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. And I understand, Gene, based on the historical incidences that happened last year, I think it was with one agency in particular, why we are doing this. But once again, I'm sensing that in many instances, we're having a knee-jerk reaction to one or two incidences that happen in a parish of so many different boards and agencies and commissions that we are reacting, and in my opinion, overreacting sometimes with legislation to try and correct behavior. You cannot mandate through legislation behavior. However, I do agree with what we are trying to do, but when I look at these ordinances, and then once again, we're following what the state did, we are not only overreacting, in my opinion, but we're talking about a review of all credit card expenses on a monthly basis. Why does it have to be so frequent?
It's because it would be...
Let me finish.
Sure, go ahead.
And so, once again, I think we are having knee-jerk reactions and overreacting with legislation to try and correct problems that don't necessarily call for throwing the baby out with the dishwater. So now you're mandating all of these boards and agencies to have to go through this laborious process on top of what they do already, because one or two agencies acted inappropriately. I support it, but I don't necessarily think, once again, that we need to keep having these knee-jerk reactions every time one person or agency jumps out the box.
Thank you.
Chair.
Mr. Groby.
I'll defer to Mr. Belsario first, and I'll go afterwards. Go ahead.
BJ, this is not a
Mr. Groby,
knee-jerk.
you have the floor.
I'm sorry. All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. To answer a couple of points, Mr. Smith, is that I don't agree with it's a knee-jerk reaction. Many years ago, we know the Coast Agency had some issues. Fire District 3 had issues. Rec District 4 had issues. There was some question as to whether mosquito control may or may not have issues. I don't believe they do. It's just a little bit, they need to tighten up on their bookkeeping issues. But the reason that we're asking the credit cards to be shown to the public at the board meetings each month is because for many times they are not. Each month, that expenditures of the money, which is public monies, what is so wrong with showing the public at the board meeting a piece of paper saying, this is what we charged on the public credit card this month? The public can't stop it, but the public can then understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights or discussion, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
And Mr. Smith, just so you know, I've not limited anybody up at this table for any time. You don't have the 2-minute time limit that everybody else has. Okay, thank you. Resolution number 16, number C747, to concur, not to concur with the City of Slidell annexation, rezoning of 4.27 acres from Parish NC4 to Slidell C2, Ward 8, District 8. Mr. Canulet. Motion to concur. Motion to concur, seconded by Mr. Bellisario. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Resolution number CS 4748, a resolution naming an audit firm for the fiscal year 2016. Mr. Tanner.
Yes, sir. I'd like to find the resolution, but we went out for proposals. As you know, we went out for proposals for a new audit firm or a audit firm. We had the same one for a while, and we wanted to make sure we were still getting a good job. And after the evaluations by the evaluation committee, their recommendation back to us is that we continue with, tell me lastly, Laporte.
Okay. You wish to?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Loreno. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bender?
And this is my fault. Could I ask Ms. Leslie to read who quoted again, please?
We received 3 proposals, and I was not part of the evaluation team, but the evaluation team reviewed proposals from Postal Weight, from Laporte, and Duplanche-Ratman. And there were 5 members of the evaluation team, and Laporte scored the highest out of the 3 proposals.
Okay. And are those proposals made available to the council?
Yes. Well, they were sent to, Don has a copy, and 2 members of the council, Mr. Jean and Don, were on the evaluation committee.
Ms. Leslie, I just want to ask your opinion, if I may, on this, okay? And I don't want to bring up any firm, okay?
That's fine.
Because my question is not based upon any particular firm, okay? I don't want it to be that way. From an accounting standpoint and from an auditing standpoint, okay, we've made this move on the council to make changes with RFPs and RFQs and bringing in new entities and different entities, or at least making it open to that. From an accounting standpoint, is it, in your opinion, or as our CFO, okay, a good thing to maintain one accounting firm for years and years and years? Because I noticed this is in another 5 years.
Yes, and we did an RFP the previous 5 years as well. I think we had a couple more respondents the first time. But you can maintain the same accounting firm. They're all held to certain standards and certain requirements. There is a list of approved firms that the Legislative Auditor's Office puts out. We did solicit every firm who had an office in St. Tammany Parish. So we didn't just advertise in the newspaper. We directly solicited probably 15 to 20 firms.
Oh, great.
And we can get you a copy of that. We have provided it to the council chair, council vice chair, and the finance committee chairman, the entire process that was followed, a list of all the firms that were solicited, as well as the evaluation scoring sheet.
Yeah, your word is fine for me.
Sure.
On the number of firms you solicited and so forth. My final question is, so in governmental accounting, which is not my forte, governmental accounting.
Yes.
It's business accounting, okay? In governmental accounting, there is no do's and don'ts with staying with a particular firm for a certain amount of time.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tanner, you have your light on. Mr. Tanner, anyone else have their light on? Please vote.
Mr. Smith? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. We're going to appeals. Beth Alberton, Paul Broussard, and Don Shapiro appealing the Planning Commission's approval on December 13, 2016, a preliminary subdivision review of Brentwood Estates, Ward 4, District 5. Is one of those speakers here?
Yes, I believe there's 3 speakers on the appeal. I'm Joe Limekeeler, president of the Century Oaks subdivision.
Joe, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes is total for everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
I won't use more than 2.
I hit 10, I hit 5.
On behalf of myself, Century Oaks homeowners, St. Michael's Church, and some of the other appellants, we have met with the developer, and we've also met with the developer's representative, and we've worked out a list of 15 compromises that are captured in a document that Mr. Shane will go over. So they deal with a lot of our concerns that we've had regarding drainage and other issues. So in that sense, a lot of the appeals will be pulled, but there are 2 other folks who do want to speak. What I also want to do is, I feel like we will reach an amicable resolution on how to go forward with this subdivision. That being said, when I came before the council at an appeal relative to the zoning and raised issues relative to the regional drainage, I'd like to recognize Reichert for bringing forward some possible solutions on that, and I was a little remiss in not thanking Reichert for facilitating a lot of these agreements that we came to. I'd like to recognize the developer, Kelly, as well as Jeff Shane as well, for working with us. It was not the easiest of processes, but it worked, and we came up with, in my opinion, a workable solution that's acceptable for the subdivision to go forward. That being said, when I came before the zoning, I met with some of you, Councilman Lorino, President Brister, and went over some of the regional concerns that we have on drainage. Those issues are still there, and I think there are solutions that are out there, and I don't want the eventual approval of this subdivision, should that come to be, to take some of the, for lack of a better word, drive and initiative away from moving forward to address those larger issues. There are solutions out there. It's going to require the parish. The drainage along 190 is going to require interactions with the state. And I think the eventual solution is actually going to require working constructively as a group together with the Army Corps of Engineers at the federal level to get the right thing done so that the larger regional drainage issues and even the traffic issues that we're all painfully experiencing right now in the area, that those are addressed. So with that, I'll yield my time to the other folks who want to speak regarding the appeal.
My name is Joyce Lynn Lowe, 150 Glendale Heights, Mantleville, Louisiana.
After much thought and consideration, I've decided to not pull my appeal for the following reasons. It was not an easy decision because so many have worked very hard to get us to this point. Many people over a period of more than 6 months have worked on a daily basis, many meetings which included residents of the Sharp Road Community Parish, staff, developers, their representative, Councilman Reichert Toledano, representative of the Archdiocese of New Orleans, including their CFO, John Eckholt, and actually Archbishop Gregory Amen, where we discussed the failures in the processes from 2011, which brings us here tonight, or brings me here tonight anyway. I must give much credit to our Councilman, Reichert Toledano. We have been able to get this far along in the negotiations only because of your participation in the process. I know you have worked hours and hours behind the scenes to make this work, to get our issues resolved or help to find compromises, but we are not entirely there yet, as you know, or as I feel you should know. At our meeting in your office December, I asked Mr. McHugh for deed restrictions in order to provide us with legal protections and assurances that our issues would legally be enforceable in the future, and specifically said to you, I expected everything to be legally binding. I explained it would need to be that way because of what happened in 2011. Specifically, meetings with our councilman at the time, Marty Gould, agreed that it would be an assisted living, specifically pointing out it would not add to our traffic issues as people in need of assisted living do not drive. We also concluded the zoning of the A&O property was to remain A1 and A2 with a 50-foot buffer on Sharp Road with one egress. This is what I understood would happen when I left negotiations with my former councilman. That is not what happened. You see, we got an assisted living and we also got a mega retirement community. And we got a 50-foot buffer along Sharp Road and one egress, but we also got zoning changes that would substantially increase density. And now when I tell you that we are promised what we were promised, they ask, did you get that in writing? No, I did not get it in writing. What I do have in writing are my handwritten notes from the meetings. Regarding the document I received last Tuesday of last week, I understand they've just changed it tonight. I did not see it. Doesn't matter. I do have concerns about the vague and subjective term reasonable. Who determines what is reasonable? Is it the council, the planning commissioner, Mr. Shane, Mr. McHugh? Hey, me. I can tell you what I think reasonable is. I am sure you would agree that this is subjective and not descriptive enough or legally binding in the least. As I stated a moment ago, what I learned from 2011 meeting is that nothing in land use is absolute unless it is deed restricted, fully legally binding. So let's look at this from my perspective. Let's just finish the process that we have worked so hard to achieve. We are so close now and should take the time to get it right. We have another month while the second appeal is still pending. I know, but you know what? And you know what? Mr. Lime Cooler did not appeal. I did. Yeah. No, I'm not thanking. You can thank me all you want. There is another appeal on the separation of Lot 5 to be heard at the February council meeting. There is time to complete this work so that all of us may feel better protected this time. Take me out in handcuffs. I don't see the hurry to move forward with this tonight.
I'll yield some of my time.
No. There is still a way of yielding time.
There used to be, and I need to say to you on the record, and I will leave 1 second, Mr. Lime Cooler did not appeal, and you allowed him 3 minutes. You understand?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Marshall, would you like to go too?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm getting one.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm not going to allow people to come in and disregard our rules and continue on the way that happens. And it's happened at other meetings. You've been here before, and it's not going to happen this year. So
Mr. Chairman.
keep that in mind. So, Mr. Bender.
Thank you. I don't want to take sides on this issue, Mr. Chairman, but I want to be very fair because that's the purpose of us being here, okay? Over the years, in the years I've spent on the city council and the parish council, and I have to speak out because I've been listening to this meeting so far, and we're getting to the point of absurd. With all due respect, you're equally elected, I'm equally elected, and we're all up here equally elected. and the people come here for the meetings, we have to use some common sense. And all of us up here have asked to give people an extra minute of time. It's just courtesy. That's all it is. I'm not up here to be a bully, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
And I would tell you, Mr. Bender, that anyone can ask for additional time, and the chair may grant that. But when they just continue to talk and try to talk over us, I'm not going to allow that
But,
to
Mr.
happen.
Chairman, you never even offered.
I'm not going to have that discussion now, so,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, I'm
Shane, are you on
speaking
the
at
other
this
side?
moment, sir. I'm a duly elected council member, and I'm speaking at this moment, and I will not stop speaking. You never offered that citizen the opportunity or to be told, ma'am, you can ask for an extra minute of time. This is not going to be run this way this year, and if my colleagues agree with this, shame on us. We have gotten tougher and tougher and tougher over the last couple of years, and it's getting absurd. You don't think it isn't? I'm getting comments, not only from my citizens, from the business community, in the way some things have been run in the last 3 or 4 years. So we need to get with the program. I don't care. I don't give a damn who the chairman is. I don't want to be the chairman. I never saw Mr. Dean run over people last year. I don't think we have to have a need for that. It works both ways. I don't want to take sides. I simply want to say this is the time, after this time in this meeting, to start this discussion. And if my colleagues completely disagree with me, that's fine. Then speak up and pull up your big boy pants.
Mr. Bender, the rule is 5 minutes. If you don't like the rule, you can always change the rule. We have procedures to do so if you think 6 minutes is sufficient. So there are mechanisms in which we govern ourselves. We have chosen 5 minutes on appeal, and that is what is there.
Ms. Blanchard, believe me, I know that it is very much as well as you do. It is not against what our rules are. It is making the public aware instead of taking the first person that's stepping before us to speak in 2017 out, almost in handcuffs. That's what we want to be noted for? I say offer them another minute of time. That's the better outcome. That's the only thing I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to disrupt any chairman. I voted for Mr. Stefanczyk. I'd vote for him again. I'll be clear on that. But by golly, it's better to talk about it now and get it out and stop the madness. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
The onset of this meeting, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues, we roll out a new set of standards that we wanted to establish for the decor in this meeting going forward for 2017, and they were pretty stringent. And I must echo the comments of Mr. Bender in that while they make some sense, the way in which we do them has to be tempered. And that's going to be an individual challenge that all of us are going to have to accept. We cannot continue to ask people to support the St. Tammany Parish government, and when they take their time to come here without being compensated to express themselves on matters that are important to them and to us as well, we cannot continue to treat them this way going forward in 2017. It's just not the right thing to do. We are more intelligent people than that. We are more civil people than that. And not only is that same attitude being relayed to our constituency and our residents, it's spread up here, where we are being limited by having dialogue, to have dialogue. So, we need to take a strong look at these new set of rules that we've put in place, and understand that we've got to do it, though, with some civility.
Thank you. The other side is, Mr. Shane, are you representing the other side?
Yes, sir, I think I am. Good evening. I'm going to start off by saying Happy New Year. My wife tells me every now and then to do this when things aren't going just right in our kitchen, so please don't throw me out. I can't imagine that 5 minutes have elapsed. And I'm only trying to maybe take a little heat out of the room for all of us, because it seems to have been an awkward meeting, to say the least. But I will try to certainly work within your rules, and I'd like to see if I could move this case along. I represent Brentwood Estates subdivision, the proposed developer of Brentwood Estates, which is a residential subdivision on Sharp Road. I have handed out to each of you a packet of documents. I would ask the council clerk to make sure that the packet that she receives becomes a part of the record this evening, because we intend for those documents to actually be conditions, if you so choose, to amend and approve preliminary subdivision approval for Brentwood Estates. I'd like to start my remarks again agreeing with others that have spoken and thanking Mr. Toledano for incredible patience. I can't imagine the amount of hours in listening and dealing with all parties on all sides, but I think he has also conducted a very good civics lesson to all of us, and that is that where there is discourse and discussion, there can also be negotiated solutions where everyone may not have the biggest smile in the world on their face, but they have a smile and they're able to move forward. I'd also like to thank the residents and the representatives that have pushed us to the max, in that we have re-examined many elements of this subdivision and tried to make improvements that we thought with the betterment of not only the subdivision but also the residents that live in the area. I don't think it's necessary to go through each of the items on the list in front of you per se, but in particular, you will see the top sheet is a list of 15 conditions that we ask supplement the preliminary subdivision approval granted by the Planning Commission on December the 6th. I would like the record to reflect that in particular, items 3 and 14 are specifically supplemented by item 15 to the extent that they're inconsistent. I have discussed that already with many of those that are here this evening, and they are in agreement with me in that regard. I would also like to bring to your attention item 9, which refers to making sure the drainage plan conforms with the gravity drainage district engineer approval, and the second attachment in your packet is in fact that approval from the Duplantis Design Group, a letter written yesterday. The third page in your packet are again the conditions that were attached to the PUD at the time of the zoning appeal before you. I have also attached a letter signed by both the Archdiocese as well as the developer agreeing to donate additional acreage if the parish deems necessary along Bayou Tête-Lourdes for the parish to construct a regional detention facility that would improve drainage in the watershed in that area. So there is an opportunity, if the parish wants land, both the Archdiocese as it relates to its residual land and also the developer are happy to sit down and work in that regard. I have also attached a copy of the amended PUD plan, and lastly a Google that depicts the pond on the church property that abuts this subdivision. I would like to conclude my remarks by asking that you, I guess, sustain the approval granted by the Planning Commission for preliminary subdivision approval, but as amended pursuant to this packet, which I have put into the record this evening. I would also say that we have respectfully requested those in attendance tonight to speak with others in their group about the dismissal of the appeal to the minor subdivision element of this case, which would come before this body in February. We realize that's not something that you have any control over, but it's been part of our discussion that if we were going to make a deal and have peace, that we would not continue this saga at next month's meeting with an appeal over the minor subdivision. I appreciate the time you have given me. I am happy to yield whatever time that may remain to anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against.
We're going into rebuttals now. Rebuttal on the appellant side. Anyone else wish to speak on that side?
Good evening. I don't speak in public, so if I pass out, don't worry about me. I'm fine. My name's John Derricks. I'll be faster than that because I don't want the sheriff up here.
Sir, I just want to make sure that you understand, there's a clock, and it'll count down for you, so when you get to 30 seconds, you'll know.
I'm going to talk fast. If you don't understand
No,
me,
you
I'll
can
slow
talk
down.
as slow as you want. You got 2 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name's John Derricks. I live at 337 Rosedown Way in Mandeville, off Sharp Road. I want to thank Mr. Toledano. I want to thank Joe. I want to thank the developer. I want to thank the rest of the council for all the efforts that were made with the Brentwood subdivision. I came in here originally thinking, wow, this is going to be a disaster. I'm very pleased. One concern, the reason I've kept my appeal, the concern that I have is the traffic study. An ordinance was pointed out that the traffic studies cannot be done during exam week. Traffic study was done during exam week. I'd like to see it redone. It's a big issue in this, and I know that people are working this, but I think is to put all the ducks in a row, the traffic study should be redone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
The rest of the time, the 2 minutes.
I have 1 minute and 15 seconds, which I won't take that long. My name is Marcia Davis, and I reside at 801 Harmony here Lane in Westwood. I'm a widow, and my Harmony Lane address is my forever home. And I'm extremely concerned about the traffic, which will be exponentially increased both during the construction of the homes of Brentwood as well as after the homes are populated. The traffic will be a problem whether or not the traffic study concurs with that assessment. This, of course, will affect the quality of life, a term I have heard at every one of the council meetings that I have attended here. It is simply not fair for the quality of life of all of the 2,000 or so residents of Sharp Road to be affected in a negative way for the financial gain of a few. Brentwood is too dense in its present state to be a good neighbor. Thank you.
Anyone else on that side? Seeing none, Mr. Shane, you got 2 minutes.
Thank you. I feel compelled to make one comment as it relates to a suggestion that the traffic study was flawed. I think that the record should reflect, at least in my opinion, but also based on investigation done by staff and Mr. Toledano, the traffic counts were done on May 17, 2016, which was a published date by the parish as being a potential date in order to take the traffic count. It was also determined that the PM peak was between 5 and 6 in the evening, and that it really didn't matter what was going on at school, in that school would not be releasing, if you will, at 5 o'clock in the day. It was a pertinent issue to know whether or not what the census of the school might have been on May 17th as to the morning peak, which was measured to be from 7 to 8. So we took the steps to go to the central office, the administration of the school board, in particular Mr. Foltz and his counterparts, and also the principal at the school, and confirm that the entire student body was in fact required to be on campus at regular time, and school takes in at Fontainebleau High School at 7:36, if I remember correctly, and lets out at 2:36 each day. So in our view, not only was the ordinance met, but there's no flaw in the count. It did exactly what we wanted it to do, and that's why I think the study was approved not only by your engineer, but also by the Planning Commission.
Anyone else on that side? Seeing none.
Mr. Stefanczyk, assuming there's no other comment from the audience, I'm going to first move to concur, and I'd like an opportunity to make just a couple of brief comments.
Motion to concur by Mr. Toledano, seconded by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Mr. Toledano?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You want to discuss it?
I want to first say, and not that I have a lot of veteran stripes on me in this office, but I've seen these things looked at and vetted over the years in many capacities, and I will tell you that I believe this is a great example of the homeowner groups, which were many in representation throughout this thing, and the developers working together. I would say it's a fair statement that when this first began, people viewed this as a horrible, terrible, inappropriate project. Through the good work of Mr. Shane and Mr. McHugh and his group, and the developers, and the homeowners, including Joe, who spoke tonight, Ken Ress, and Dan, many of those people, I think we've come to a consensus. And by consensus, what we mean is that not everybody is satisfied with everything, including myself, but I think at the end of the day, you have a project that works well in Sharp Road, fills a need, and is a good project in its final analysis. We learn some things as we go along, as in the gentleman mentioning the traffic study. That has caused myself and Mr. Hand to visit on that subject, and although Mr. Shane and I double-checked his work on that, is exactly correct. So it didn't it didn't affect the integrity of this traffic study, given it's a Fontainebleau High School. However, it could at times, and so Mr. Hand and I have talked about the need to tweak the ordinance that we have as it relates to traffic studies to make that better for those schools that wouldn't necessarily have the same time frame. But I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that short of the first space launch, I think this residential subdivision has been vetted more than any one that I have seen in residential subdivisions. It's been a pleasure working with the homeowners groups, and I very much appreciate, although Ms. Jocelyn didn't finish in the way that she had hoped to finish, but the fact of the matter is she was a participant and we got some good input from her. And then I would be remiss if I did not say this. I think we in this position as councilmen and councilpersons more properly stated, learn something every day that we come to these meetings. I learned something tonight. And I think despite our good faith and effort to get people up and down through agendas and not keep people here to 12 o'clock, I think we need to sort of probably look at how we do that a little bit. I was a little bit confused, frankly, in her particular time, because I thought she had another 5 minutes. So that being said, I think in a moment of reflection internally, perhaps in some committee, we can look at how we do that to make sure that when there is valid debate, as in this case, where there were 20 appellants, we have to understand that we might have to expand that time a little bit. And I know we don't want to be discourteous to the audience, nor do we want to be discourteous to us up here to not sit here and lose the sense of a conversation in hours of discussion. But I think we all need to reflect and say what we don't want to have happen is too many of these events. And I don't place any blame on anybody, including particularly our chairman. I think it's a fallout from trying to handle things in a courteous way, and sometimes we've seen in the past it didn't always work. So I think we all believe up here that we're going to help make that system a little better. And in the meantime, I appreciate everybody's effort on this, and hopefully you will join me in concurring with that approval. Thank you very much.
Mr. Groby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Shane. About, we just got this packet about 15 minutes ago, and reading through it, one of the things that jumped out at me is almost every one of the line items, and they're all good line items, but it says, item 1, for example, developer shall create. Item 3, developer shall require. Item 4, developer shall construct. Until you get to item 9, and I'm not a lawyer and there's a room full in here, but it says developer shall reasonably be conformed. Why can't he conform to a plan put by DDG on behalf of the district? That word reasonable in there is a real gray area for enforcing something. So I'm a little indigestion on that one.
May I answer?
I'm finished. Thank you,
Yes.
Chair.
Thank you. Let's pick up right where you left off. Look at page 2 of the packet. And I mentioned in my presentation, at the time we did the conditions, I didn't have approval yet from DDG on behalf of Greenwich District 5. You'll see that they issued a letter yesterday that said our plan meets all of their requirements. So at the time we negotiated that particular provision, reasonably was the best we could come up with. We now, in fact, have the specific approval to our specific plan. And every other matter that says shall, these are going to be conditions of preliminary subdivision approval, which means we must do those things through our work order, and to the extent that they need to be noted on the final subdivision plat, they shall be.
So you're saying the letter went out yesterday, which you did. So number 9 technically should read the developer shall conform with the drainage plan. Is that would be the more proper language?
I would think you could say the developer shall or the developer has, but yes.
Okay, I just want to.
Yes,
that was the only issue I had, because everything else is shall. I've underlined all the shalls, and that's the only one that was a reasonable, maybe possible.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Toledano, I know you have a motion on the floor.
Well, I do, Steve, thank you, but I want to make sure that that motion includes the corrected plat, because there was some confusion in the paperwork here. So the motion that I am moving on should have the corrected plat. Is that right, Mr. Shane?
The corrected plat, but also all of the
15 items.
conditions, that packet
All those items.
that I put into the record, that 6-page or 7-page packet.
Absolutely.
Those should be conditions that are part of the approval.
Thank you.
And to that extent, I attach them as an addendum and make them a part of the concurring resolution.
That's what I was wanting to make
Yeah,
sure.
thank you very
included
much.
that. Thank you.
I appreciate
Okay,
that.
any further discussion? Please vote.
I just didn't realize that at first, you know?
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. Ordinances for adoption, ordinance calendar number 5715 to extend for, oh, I'm sorry, yes, we do. Need to adopt, Mr. Toledano. Motion to adopt a resolution seconded by Mr. Lorino. Any discussion? Please vote. Clear the thing.
Mr. Smith? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance for adoption, ordinance calendar number 5715 to extend for 6 months a moratorium within the portions of voting district 914, Ward 8, District 14. Motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Groby. Any discussion? I couldn't hear. I didn't see anybody move their hand. I heard something. Okay. Seconded by Mr. Canulet. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5716 to extend for 6 months the moratorium on the opening of new streets in Angelica Estates, Ward 3, District 5.
Mr. Tavancic, our engineer is recommending that moratorium be extended, and therefore I so move.
Motion by Mr. Toledano, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Please. 6 months. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5718 to amend the 2016 operating budget, amendment number 13. Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Roby. Any discussion?
You bypassed number 3.
We skipped this, but you're here, so go ahead and do this, and then go back.
Okay, I missed one.
No,
Sorry.
you missed 3. You might have missed 3, Steve.
Yeah, I did. We're on 4 now, and I'll pick up 3.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Ms. Blanchard. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar, go back to 3. Ordinance calendar number 5717 to extend for additional 6 months the moratorium on Louisiana Highway 21 planning corridor, Ward 1, District 1. Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Lorino. Any discussion? Please vote.
I think I'm good on that one. Thank you very much.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5719, amending the official planning zoning map to reclassify 12,000 square feet from A6 to A4A, Ward 9, District 13.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Blanchard, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5720 to amend the Parish Unified Development Code, Volume 1 zoning, various to mobile homes, mobile food trucks as administrative permit.
You have cards.
Okay? I need a motion to put it on the floor.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Blanchard, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Okay, and I have 2 cards. Mr. Carlo Hernandez.
Thank you, Carlo Hernandez. Administrative permits, this is another one, and I've requested in the past that all administrative permits be placed online so that the public can gain access to them. And I was told when I brought it up again with this one that it was in the process or it has been done. If it has been done, I'm not aware of it. I can't find it. And I think all of you know that I'm pretty good at knowing what's going on here, especially online. Now, the mobile food trucks, you know, if you look at the definition that's in here now, it's only on private property. It's not on public property. It's interesting that the way I read it down, it wasn't like this earlier, that you could have, if you own the property, you could have this food truck sitting on your property 24/7, 365 days a year. That's the way I read this. Interestingly, it only requires the food truck to adhere to, when it sells alcoholic beverages, the alcoholic beverage requirements in the zoning ordinance. It does not require it to have the ability to sell food like restaurants do in the zoning ordinance. So you could have this food truck, and you will have this food truck sitting on all these ordinances. And it's every district except residential districts. So those districts that presently do not allow restaurants, you will now be allowed to have this food truck sitting on this private property 356 days a year, every hour, the way I read this thing. And, the thing about the definition of it, it sells the majority of food on the thing. If I sell mostly food, I could also sell other things. For instance, cigarettes. I could sell cigarettes from here. There's nothing restricting me from selling cigarettes on here or anything else if you wanted to. So I think maybe you ought to look at this. And the other thing, too, if you look at numbers 8 and 9, they run together. So either there's a restriction or there's something that's missing there. And of course, if it is missing, then I think that we need to, amend this thing to include it. Of course, the rest of us would like to know what it is. So, something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Case? I'm going to ask Ms. Blanchard to take over the meeting a minute.
Hello, my name's Karen Case. My husband and I, Christopher Case, own Old School Eats. We are a food truck, only one of a handful in St. Tammany right now. I'd have to disagree with some of his comments. I read the proposal, and it says 4-hour limit, and that we cannot sell other merchandise. It is only for food on private property. We've been restaurant owners, okay? We have fought the hard fight in restaurant. We owned Christopher's on Cary for 4 years in Slidell. Unfortunately, to shut it down, we didn't give up on St. Tammany. We reopened as a food truck. We've traversed the gray area of the laws, doing caterings, private contracts, fundraisers, festivals, and special events. I salute St. Tammany for actually trying to look forward. I am asked every single day, where are you parking? Where do you park? I don't have an answer because there is no place to park. It has to be a private event, catering, or special event or festival. The demand is there for food trucks. I also see the perspective of a restaurant owner, of a neighborhood. I don't want to park next to a restaurant. I feel like there is some things lacking in what is written for more protection for the restaurants. And just as one of the few people who's doing this on the North Shore, I have some suggestions. There should be caps on the number of permits given, and there should be footage to not be close to a restaurant. I didn't see that mentioned. And that's, me fighting for the other side. I am a food truck, but I would like to, throw our hat in if we could offer any help in developing this. I too would like to see it, a more expansive explanation of where we can get this permit, how much will it cost, and things like that. And if you have any questions for us, we're more than happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Case. Thank you for your time. There are no further comments from the floor, so it comes back to the council. We've already have a motion and a second. We're ready. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Are y'all ready to vote? Please vote.
Ms. Blanchard, may I speak?
I'm sorry, Ms. Brister, please.
Some very good comments were made tonight about this, and certainly we can amend this as we go forward, and I appreciate the offer of assistance in getting information, so we would like to have that from your perspective and from the public perspective. So I appreciate it, and we will be happy to talk with you and get any comments, and we can, if you adopt it tonight, we certainly can amend it as we go forward.
We voted, right?
We haven't announced yet.
I only have 10. Let's see. Mr. Lorino, Mr. Toledano, Ms. Ms. O'Brien, Mr. Smith. Motion passes with 11 yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstention. That's still 11. Still missing something.
Thank you.
And 1 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5721, amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2 acres from CB1 to HC2, Ward 4, District 5.
I'm going to move for the passage of same.
Motion by Mr. Toledano to move for approval, seconded by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance count number 5722, amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.1 acres from A3 to NC4, Ward 1, District 1.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Please vote.
Mr. Lorino. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance count number 5723, amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.42 acres from A2 to A2 and MHO, Ward 3, District 3. Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Lorino. Any discussion? Please vote. Mr. Toledano, you going to?
I hit yes.
No, your light is on.
Oh, just keeping it on the ready position.
That's what I thought.
Mr. Tanner. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Mr. Dean, did you have something you wanted to say too?
No, sir.
Thank you.
I was hoping my bulb would burn out.
Ordinance count number 5724, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.47 acres to A3 to A3 and MHO, Ward 7, District 11.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Blanchard, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance count number 5725, amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2.55 acres from MD3 to MD1, Ward 4, District 5. Need a motion on the floor. So moved. Motion by Mr. Toledano, seconded by Mr. Thompson. I do have a card. Mr. Shane?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
You have 2 minutes.
Of all nights to want to discuss an ordinance to be adopted, I represent the petitioner, and I ask that you adopt the ordinance, but you didn't need me to come to the podium to ask you to do that. But if you'll bear with me, I have discussed this matter with Councilman Toledano because the project is in his district, with Mrs. Brister, who will eventually see the signed ordinance if you elect to adopt it, and also Mrs. Rabelais, her counsel. This is a down zone from MD3 to MD1 to facilitate a sale for the construction of an assisted living facility. The sale is to occur next week. The seller is concerned that if for some reason the sale does not occur, the seller will lose the MD3 zoning that it now has, and the property would be zoned MD1. I ask you to adopt tonight, but I thought it would be wise in the spirit of transparency to tell you that if for some reason the transaction does not close, we may go to Mrs. Brister during the period of time that she has to veto the ordinance and ask her to consider vetoing the ordinance. And vetoing the ordinance would allow the property to continue to be zoned as it's zoned today. This is not something that's a problem today. It's probably something that a silly lawyer thinks about and asks a council to consider. But rather than to start those wheels in motion next week without having discussed it with any of the operative parties and making it, again, to public knowledge, I thought would have been a mistake. So again, I appreciate your consideration of adopting the ordinance this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. I would tell you, though, if she does veto it, we need to reconsider that here before the council, and there will be a vote taken. You know, it could be overridden. I don't think it would be, but it could be overridden. Any other further discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5726, amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2.21 acres from A1 to A1 in MHO Ward 2, District 6. Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5727, amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 0.47 acres from A6 to A4A, Ward 9, District 13.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Blanchard, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5728, ordinance to authorize the parish president to acquire certain parcels, right-of-ways, and/or servitudes, Ward 9, District 11.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Blanchard, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5729 to declare multiple tax adjudicated properties as surplus. Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The last several votes, Teresa said that there was 2 absent. I only count 1 absent. The last several were 2 absent.
When I was saying 2 absent, Mr. Smith's vote was not showing up, and he was previously absent.
He's been here for several votes.
She calculated it right.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this one? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5730 to authorize the parish president to amend an existing conservation servitude from the Archdiocese of New Orleans, Ward 4, District 5. Motion by Mr. Toledano, seconded by Mr. Lorino. I have 1 card. Jeff Shane.
Yes, sir. Good evening again. I think that this ordinance bears some discussion because in light of the appeal that you heard this evening and the approval with the additional conditions, the draft of the amendment to the conservation servitude will need to be revised to reflect the changes that were agreed to this evening. In pertinent part, the detention pond was actually increased in size, which means that rather than adding 86 acres to the conservation servitude, it's going to be a little closer to about 39 acres. But we still essentially have the same provisions in the amendment. We realize that it's our job to revise that amendment, submit it to the administration and their legal counsel, have them review it, certainly ask whatever questions, make whatever comments. But I did want the record to reflect that there will be some adjustment to that document based on the final deal made tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Resolutions under appointments. Resolution to appoint David Cressy, term expired, to the Florida Parish's Human Services Authority.
Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Tanner.
Waived the parish-wide thing.
Somebody has to move to. You want to move to, a motion by Mr. Tanner to suspend the rules and adopt tonight? Second. Seconded by Mr. Toledano. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please vote by your lights. First one.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Second resolution is to appoint one member to replace Barbara Morgan, resigned, St. Tammany Parish Library Board of Control. This is again a parish-wide appointment. Mr. Smith.
I'd like to move to nominate Ms. Antoinette Eden.
Antoinette.
E-D-E-N.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Wish to close the nominations and see no further nominations.
Can I suspend the rules?
You want to suspend the rules and adopt tonight?
Yes.
Well, you got
Motion
two
by
people
Mr.
running. I want to know who the other person is first. Not, I mean, just get it tonight and not know who it is.
It's your choice to vote against it. He's put a motion on the floor to suspend the rules and adopt.
I know.
Okay. Motion to suspend the rules and adopt by Mr. Smith. Please vote by your lights.
Who was the second? Teresa wants to know the second.
I think Belisario seconded.
Motion passes, 11 yeas, 2 nays, 1 absent.
Resolution to appoint 6 members to the Community Action Agency Advisory Board. There were 6 names submitted. 3 are currently on the board, and 3 are wanting to replace or asking to replace certain people on the board. And those would be Louis Fitzmaurice Darrells, Dr. Charles Preston, and Nuetta Javery have been requested reappointment. David Herclair requested appointment to replace Keith Green. Charlotte Burkhalter requested appointment to replace Kimberly Hamilton, and Sherry Eastridge requested appointment to replace Sandra LaBorge. Any motion by Mr. Damn it. Motion by Mr. Belisario, excuse me, by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Canulet. Any discussion? This is parish-wide, so you wish to suspend the rules?
Yes, I'd like a motion to suspend the rules and adopt.
Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Canulet, suspend the rules and adopt. Any further nominations? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Resolution to appoint Shannon Schelling and Cassandra Bennett to replace Cabrina Longman and Ted Ober, both resigned to St. Tammany Parish Recreation District Number 2, Ward 6, District 6, Mr. Tanner. Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Groby. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Resolution to replace Susan Burden, to replace John Burden, deceased on St. Tammany Sewage District Number 1, Mr. Lorino. Motion by Mr. Lorino, seconded by Mr. Toledano. Any discussion? Please vote.
Somebody didn't vote, I don't know yet. Mr. Canulet. Mr. Canulet? Yes. Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Okay, under discussion and other matters, a motion to refer to the Zoning Commission for recommendation of proposed rezoning of 1.45 acres from A1A to A3, Ward 7, District 7. Mr. Groby. Mr. Groby. Motion by Mr. Groby, seconded by Mr. Belisario. I have 1 card to speak. Carlo Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez, you have your 2 minutes.
Thank you. Carlo Hernandez. You're about to adopt, and this is the first one in 2017, a motion to not collect the normal funds that would be collected by the Department of Development and Planning. The amount is that I estimate is $397.50. In last year, 2016, the amount totaled in excess of $14,000. Now, what's interesting, it seems to me, is that we've had a request. Those of us who attend meetings, certainly you have security here at your meetings. The Planning and Zoning Commission meetings also have security. Now, the Board of Adjustments has requested consideration for security at its meeting, and hopefully one of the reasons will not be that sufficient funds are not available, because hopefully this will be the first and last time in 2017 that you will waive any fees, and the rest of the fees, last year it was $14,000 plus, the rest of the fees, I see one head shaking no, and he was one of the leaders last year, no question, that we will have the ability to properly fund security for those entities, the Board of Adjustments, that believes that they need security also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Any further discussion on the motion? Please vote with your lights.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Notice of a public meeting. Notice is hereby given that a special meeting to be held on Monday, February 6th at 6 p.m. in the council chambers of St. Tammany Parish Government Complex, 21,490 Coop Drive, Mandeville. The Parish Council in the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, plans to consider adopting one or more resolutions ordering and calling elections to be held on Saturday, April 29th within the Parish of St. Tammany to authorize the levy of an ad valorem tax included but not limited to the renewal of a parcel fee to be collected within the boundaries of Road Lighting District Number 14, Ashton Oaks subdivision of St. Tammany, of the Parish of St. Tammany. I've read that. We now go to the agenda items off the floor. I have one item off the floor, a resolution to provide for canvassing the returns and declaring the results of the special election held on Saturday, December 10th in Lighting District Number 11 of St. Tammany Parish to authorize the renewal of service charges therein. Okay, do I hear a motion? Motion to bring this off the floor. Okay, seconded by Mr. Lorino. And this is to open this item off the floor. Any further discussion? Please vote with your light. The vote must be unanimous. Mr. Lorino, do you vote?
It's just slow. Oh, it's, motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, any other items to come off the floor? And I'll go down the list. Mr. Sharp? Mr. Lorino, Mr. Toledano? Ms. Blanchard? No. Mr. Tanner? Mr. Groby? Mr. Canulet? Mr. Belisario? Thank you. It might be it before it's over. Ms. O'Brien? No, sir. Mr. Bender? No, sir. Mr. Smith? Good. Seeing none?
No. We need to make a motion for the resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So need to make
I need to have a motion on the resolution that we open the agenda for. So motion by Mr. Lorino, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Any further discussion? Please vote with your lights.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Having seen no further items to come before this meeting, meeting is adjourned.